Well, hello ladies and gents, and festive greetings from Dan Sohan and family. Today I'm out on Christmas Eve doing a little bit of work on our Volkswagen EOS here. It's the 2-litre TDI. Now the other day we went to start it. It was a particularly frosty morning, and while it didn't have any issue starting at all, it did sound a little bit lumpy when it first started, and that quickly went away after about 15-20 seconds. Now, if I hadn't, known the car for the last 3 years, I'd have said that was perfectly normal. But because I've known the car for so long and it's been faultless, apart from the odd bit of maintenance, a cam belt and clutch and a fuel pump, it's been absolutely faultless. I thought there's something not quite right here, so maybe a sensor or maybe it's just particularly cold. So I put the scan tool on there, ran it through the laptop, and it did surely enough throw up a fault. There we have it. Hopefully you can see it's got a fault found on cylinder number 2 and it's coming up as open circuit on the glow plug. Really useful bit of kit to have this software. Won't tell you exactly what's wrong in many cases, but quite often will give you a definite kind of indication of where to start looking. So yeah, we decided to go and get a glow plug. I have already replaced it, but I'm just going to talk through the process and another way of testing the glow plugs. So fairly easy, straightforward job to do. What you will need, which might be a bit unusual, is a 10mm long reach socket. So this is a long reach. The reason it needs to be long reach is because this is the glow plug here. This is the electrical connector, and this is the one that goes into the engine. This long reach needs to fit over that connector, so hopefully that works. Then you might need an extension bar. You might not need an extension bar. And then you're going to need a socket driver. Or ratchet. Now, some cars have incredible difficulty getting glow plugs out, and there is a risk that the glow plug can actually snap off inside the engine. Now, I've never actually had this happen on a Volkswagen, but I have had it happen on a Vauxhall and had trouble with a BMW before. So fingers crossed they come out easily for you, but you certainly don't want to be putting so much pressure on them that you could possibly snap them. The thing that can happen is this end here can seize into the engine and snap off, and if it does, we're in trouble. But hopefully they'll just loosen, come out easily, and you can swap them out. That being said, this video is for educational purposes only, and if you did run into trouble and snap one off, I'm afraid it's up to you to get a mechanic, and they might need to take the head off and extract bits, which will be a right pain. So if you're not completely comfortable with all of this, do get another mechanic to do it, but at least you've got some idea of what's involved. Right, all that being said, there's another way to test these units without using the computer over here. You can actually just use our multimeter. Any multimeter will do. We just need to set it to the ohm setting. There we go. And then we can actually measure the resistance. Now hopefully you can see that. Now what happens is, as these probes are apart, we get OL, which is overload, and then if we connect them together, you can see we almost get 0.2, and that's the resistance of our connection. The firmer I press them together, the lower that number goes. Now what we can do is use that to measure the resistance of certain things, and we're going to go across and measure the resistance of the glow plugs. Sod's law that it would start raining as I'm about to do this. So what we'll do is we'll start off by popping the hood on this TDI. We're then faced by the engine cover. There's no screws or bolts in the engine cover here. It should just pop off. There's kind of some poppers under here. Now the rubbers do rot and you might need to buy some new ones, but it should just be as simple as popping that off. And if they did break and you had to order some new ones, don't worry, you can run the engine without this on. All it does is dampens the sound and the knocking from the engine just to quieten it down a bit. So here we are at the front of the engine, and the glow plugs are actually connected here. There's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll pull that wiring connector off. As you look into the engine bay, we'll start on the left hand side, we'll reach down, give it a wiggle, pull it off, wiggle, pull it off. And that was really quite easy. There we go. And that is the loom or the connector out of the way. So as we look into the engine bay, the glow plugs are numbered 1, which is just behind this dipstick here, number 2, number 3 and number 4. Now you might be able to see just under them looks a little bit oily, but that's actually just because I've sprayed some WD-40 in. If you've got time, it's well worth spraying a little bit of WD-40 around them, just to break any corrosion or crud that's holding them together. The other advice is that you actually want to undo them when the engine's quite hot. So the engine has been running, it's got fully up to temperature, and it's been off for about 5 or 10 minutes now. Before we retract them, we need to use the multimeter to test them. So there we are And what we'll do is we'll connect the negative probe to somewhere metal on the body. Anywhere will do, just make sure you get a connection. So just rub the engine block just here to make a connection, and then I can touch the top of these and we can get a reading. So we can see this one here is 2.2, this one is 1.5, this one, which is brand new, is 1.4, and this one over this side is 1.3. So they're all normal, they're all fine. If I get the faulty one here and measure the resistance of this one between there and there, we can see this one comes up at 256 ohms. That's very nice in digital there. So 256 ohms. This one is the one that's thrown a code, and I've actually already replaced it. But just to show how easy it is, I'll take one of these out that hasn't been undone already. Fingers crossed it doesn't break. So in with the 10mm driver. To undo them, we're going to be turning them anti-clockwise, and there they go. It's really quite easy. So we just wind this one out. I'm going to take the ratchet off now. It's quite loose and quite easy, and it took very little effort at all to undo it. So don't go straining or forcing. You know, if you're forcing and straining stuff, it's likely something's going to snap. Just use 1 or 2 fingers, apply some pressure, give it a little wiggle, and hopefully it will come out. So it takes a little while to unscrew. Bear in mind the engine is hot, so when you grab it, it's going to be hot. And there we go. That's the glow plug out. So as I mentioned, that is still reading as a good glow plug, so I'm just going to put that one back in now. What I'd probably do is offer it down into the port by hand, and then use the driver without the ratchet on the end by hand just to start it off, because this is the engine block or the engine head. You don't want to be rounding off any screws or cross-threading anything there. You want it to go in nice and easy. Screw it in, make sure we've got no dirt in the ports. Once it's in tight by hand, I'm just going to use the socket here to do it up. Now again, this doesn't want to be tight. There are torque settings. I don't know what they are. I'll see if I can put them up on the screen here, but I haven't got them with me. So I'm just going to grab the ratchet right around the neck here and just do it up as tight as I can by hand. If I use a long lever, I'm going to put too much force on. There we go, done up. And then we need to reconnect the loom, starting on the right hand side of the engine bay, offer them over, and as they go into place they should click. 1, 2, 3, 4. Job done. That's pretty much it. As I say, the engine starts fine without glow plugs. Actually, you could pull that connector off and start the engine and you would see that it runs fine. It's only going to be on those really frosty mornings, cold mornings when the diesel's thick, that you're going to want those glow plugs working properly. So now we know we've got 4 good working glow plugs. The other thing I should have mentioned during the process of putting the new one in is when you get the new ones, you want to offer them up against an old one to check the lengths are the same. Bearing in mind this hot end, which basically glows red hot to heat the diesel up, sits into the cylinder housing or sits into the cylinder area, and if they're longer they could end up colliding with the piston and that'd be very bad. So make sure you've got these from a reputable supplier that can check their computer system, and also don't trust the computer. Once you get them, offer them up to the originals and check the size and dimensions are very similar. The ones we've just got here were about 1 millimeter longer, but we decided that was close enough, so we've put them in and nothing's gone bang. So good luck, fairly quick fix. Took less than 10 minutes to pull that one out and put it back in again. Probably only take about 15 minutes to do all of them. And then what we just need to do is place the engine cover back on top to prevent that noise from getting in the car. Start off with the small grey cover, and then we put the black cover. It just has kind of ball connectors on like there, and they pop into these rubber grommets, and if those rubbers are perished you might need to find some new ones. They're fairly cheap. Volkswagen Audi engine cover grommets, I guess is what they'd be called. Get a pack of those for a few quid. So that's all in place, all ready to go. So you might want to start the engine, just check everything fires as it should. Lovely jubbly, it's time for my Christmas dinner now. Merry Christmas!